Here on the BookTube channel, Jack in the Book Stack, I talk about a wide variety of book genres and the bookish lifestyle. But something else I really like to celebrate is the simple pleasure of a really good theme. And with it being September, I think the perfect theme is back to school. I mean, it's still triple-digit temperatures here in Phoenix, Arizona, but I can get into the spirit of back to school. So I picked some books to read that I think are really going to capture these vibes, and let's just go ahead and dive into it, and then I'll come back and tell you what I thought about them.
Presents Vita Nostra by Marina and Sergei Diachenko, read by Jessica Ball.
I had so much fun celebrating the back to school theme, and I think I really nailed it. Before I get into my reviews and reactions of the books that I read for this reading vlog, I want to highlight two of my favorite books that really inspire me and motivate me to read with this theme. The books are The Will of the Many and Babel. These are two books about magical schools, so they're very heavy in the fantasy, and the schools are very unique, but they give me all the vibes that I look for in a good dark academia or magical school setting, or just a back-to-school setting in general. They give me the fun, unique classes that our main characters go to, the students that they interact with, some academic rivalry involved as well, different challenges, trying to excel and move up in the academic setting. There's just so many different elements that I really like, and I just really like studying. That is something I like to read about. It seems kind of strange, because when I was in school, I myself did not like to study, but here we are, as an adult, I like to read about it. The first book that I finished for this back to school reading vlog was A Study in Drowning. Now this one I liked. I think I landed at about a 3-star rating. This is supposed to be, I think, more of a YA fantasy. We definitely have an academic rivals to lovers situation going on. Effie is the name of our female main character. She has always been really intrigued by fairy tale stories, and in particular, the legends of the Fairy King, which actually really gave me strong Labyrinth vibes. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that movie, or if I'm showing my age here because it's a little bit of an older movie, but throughout this book, I definitely got those vibes. Effie is a student of architecture at her school, but she really longs to study literature. Unfortunately, that major seems to be limited to male students, so she is doing the next best thing. A project pops up where she can go to the home of it's a deceased author, but it's her favorite author, and he actually wrote the stories of the Fairy King that she has always been so obsessed with. So she travels there under this guise of being an architecture student and doing an architecture project. But really, she's just excited to study this author that she has loved so much. When she gets to this secluded estate setting, which I typically love in books, she is shocked to find that her rival is there. Dun dun dun! And he is a literature student, so she's really jealous of him and has this the rivalry is really, really weird. I don't really understand it because he seems to be like really nice to her and she's just not buying it. She just thinks that he's out to like sabotage her and, you know, be this literature star student, and I'm like, whatever. I never really bought into the rivalry. The entirety of the book takes place in this estate setting, so I did not get any academic vibes actually, because they're not at the school. There's no other students, there's no classes, there's no teachers, there's kind of studying, but it really revolves around this mystery that these two students band together to try and solve. So it's more of like a mystery type story, but it has this fantastical element because we're dealing with, I mean, fairy tales and this Fairy King. And so I think that kind of disappointed me a little bit, but what really drove down my enjoyment of this book was it gave me the ick, because Effie, I think, is 19 years old, so she's legally an adult. I'm pretty sure she's an adult, but there's all these like predatory vibes from the grown male adult characters. There's like a couple of them that they're just predators, and it really, really grossed me out, and I couldn't really get past it. And it wasn't like the main plot line necessarily, but it definitely weirded me out. But that also gave me the Labyrinth vibes. When I said that this book reminded me of that movie, I mean, you could have the same argument for this movie, that there's this like Fairy King adult going after this teenage girl, right? So, I mean, if that doesn't bug you for the movie, maybe it wouldn't bug you here, but I just couldn't fully connect to the book, and I think that was a matter of missed expectations and also that ick factor of the predator adults. And also the lack of chemistry between our two characters. Like I said, I couldn't really get on board with this rivalry that they had to then become friends and then romantic love interests. So this one was a 3-star because it was just okay, but I don't know necessarily who I would recommend this to. Next, I picked up The School for Good Mothers. Now this one, I knew what I was getting into. It is a dystopian, and it's about a mom who isn't deemed the best mom by cultural standards, and so she's forced to go to this school to like re-educate herself on their definition of being a good mother. And from what I read, that absolutely is what I got. And when I got into it, okay, listen, I'm not a mother, and so I try not to judge parents in general because it's a really tough job and I can't relate, right? Like, I know it has to be different when you're in this situation, so I try not to judge. But our main character makes a parenting choice in the very beginning that I just couldn't sympathize for her. I mean, I get that every mother needs a break, and I think they are entitled to that. I think that is essential for your mental stability and ensures you can be a good parent. I agree with taking a break from being a parent and just being your individual self. But what she does, I couldn't really be on her side. So then when she's getting into the situation to go to this school, everything just like spirals out of her control. And I just found it very, very claustrophobic and stressful. Even though I could see why she would have had to be re-educated by this system, the book was just making me feel heavy. And so I decided to put it down. I think I only got like 58 pages. I'm looking at my notes here. I DNF'd it at 58 pages because I'm still really interested in seeing where this one goes. I was just overwhelmed by the sense of powerlessness that this was describing, and it wasn't the mood. So I didn't get to the school setting of this to really judge it for this themed vlog. Next, I picked up the audiobook for Vita Nostra, and this one I had expectations of it being really, really weird. But I wasn't quite prepared for the level of weirdness this book delivered. So this one starts off with I think she's a teenage girl. She's on vacation with her mother. It's like a beach vacation. And she's kind of stalked by this man, and it's really creeping her out. And finally she talks to him, and he basically says, you have to do this thing for me, or else there'll be consequences. And the thing is, she has to like swim in the ocean to this buoy, tap it, and swim back. And she has to do it at dawn every day, or else. And I think she gives in too easily and says, okay, but she does it. And the first day after she does it, she throws up these gold coins. And so then every time she does it, she throws up these gold coins. Very interesting and weird situation. And so that gives you an example of some of the weirdness that I'm talking about here with this book. And this man keeps giving her these tasks, or else there's these consequences. And we get a sense of what the consequences are. And they also kind of lend to this magical realism vibe that this book has. And so I'm like, okay, maybe I could be convinced. Now you have my attention. And so he ends up telling her that she's going to go to this school to study. So she kind of goes against her will. She's kind of backed into a corner because of these consequences. And the school is super weird. The classes are weird. And as she's meeting her fellow students at this school, she's learning that a lot of them, I think all of them, are there against their will as well. And that's what the story is about. I was really engaged at first because it was so weird and magical and fun, and I didn't know what direction it was going to go. Like, what is the why? What is the why behind all this weirdness? And I was enjoying it, but then it just got so much weirder, and it lost me. The weirdness lost me on it, and I kind of checked out a little bit. And then the end, I don't understand. Like, I want a literal explanation of this, but I don't know if there is one. I don't know how else it could have ended, but it was just so strange. So I rated this 3 out of 5 stars because I enjoyed a lot of the reading experience. However, just as it went on, it was outside of my comfort zone and my preferences for my weirdness tolerance. But in terms of dark academia, Vita Nostra was an excellent choice because it was super dark and it was very academic. We are at this like university type campus with all these students, and they are taking very interesting, unique classes, and the professors and the counselors are all very intense and interesting. So as far as dark academia, I recommend this book, but I would prepare future readers for just weirdness. Just be prepared for weird. Then I read my favorite book from this back to school theme, which was The Combat Codes. And I actually rated this one 5 stars because I enjoyed it so much. It actually really reminded me of The Will of the Many, the other academic book I mentioned that's one of my favorites. Not necessarily because of the plot, the politics, or the world building, but because we have a main character who is very strong at fighting, very physically strong, very strategic and smart, but they always look out for the underdog and have a strong moral compass. And so that really reminded me of the same like tone and vibes that I got from the other book. In this world, there are no wars, but there is like a designated champion that participates in hand-to-hand combat, and the winner gets the territory, gets the resource, gets the law that they want. I mean, that's how conflict is resolved, is through these fights, these physical fights. And there is a combat school in which students learn how to fight so they can become these knights, they can become these champions and fight for their government. We have 2 main perspectives that we follow. Firstly, we have Murray. He is 52 years old. He actually went to this combat school and he would fight for his government. And he really follows the codes that they taught there, which was really just having a strong ethical stance. We fight so that other people don't have to, like to prevent these wars. And so there was grand purpose to what they were doing. And things have changed since then. Things have gotten a lot more political, and so he didn't really want any part of that. He was demoted to like a scout for the school for future students to become these knights. So he is kind of disenchanted with the whole process now since it's gotten so political. The other point of view we follow is Sego. I don't know how to pronounce his name. Sego? He is 13 years old, and he is an amazing fighter. He has great skills, but he has found himself in like a slave situation where he's fighting for entertainment in these like underground fight club, like fighting rings. And so that is where Murray scouts him and sees him and wants to bring him to the school. So that's kind of like an overall plot summary of this. There is a mystery of the fact that Sego knows about the codes. He fights by the codes, by this ethical standard. And you can see that in the fighting rings, the underground fighting rings, he knows when his opponent is done, and he doesn't like beat them to a pulp. He like ends the fight humanely and cleanly. And so Murray's like, how did he learn about these codes? How can he quote it? He really embodies all these ethics. Like, how does he know all this stuff? And so that there's a little bit of a mystery there. Now, the first half of the book was really that plotline of them coming together in these like this underground like fighting ring. So we don't get to the school setting until like the second half of the book. But then we get the classes. Then we get the different instructors and teachers, and we're getting a sense of the politics driving these different professors and counselors. We get the different students and their inner conflicts and their battles and like trying to rise in the ranks. And I loved all of it. I don't really care about battle scenes, whether it's like with weapons and like a war type situation, or if it's like this where it's hand-to-hand combat. I think if you like martial arts, you might really enjoy this. I can't really vouch for the accuracy of these moves, but I like the descriptions in terms of like using an opponent's momentum or size against them. It's like the strategic element I really like. And there is a lot of strategy in this that we see from our characters. Let's take Sego, for example. So in his hand-to-hand combat, he has a ton of strategy that he moves and like, or that he has in picking his next move in the battle. But he's also strategic on just like an overall planning scale outside of the fighting ring. And I love to see that. It's so intelligent and I enjoyed that aspect. I love that he sticks up for the underdog and he really lives by these codes and has a strong sense of right. Not only with Sego and Murray, but with Sego and the other students, you really see these bonds and these friendships forming. And it's too early to say if it's going to be like found family vibes, because this one it's not light and fluffy. Like it's a little bit darker. So I don't know if I would categorize this as having found family yet, but I do like seeing this bond form, and I like seeing them collaborate together. So right now they're kind of just like really ethical colleagues that strategize together and recognize each other's strengths. I'm hoping it goes towards found family because I'm a sap and I love that. But that's something I really like to see. Something I don't like to see is so far there's only one female character that's one of the students, and she really takes on like that Hermione Granger persona from Harry Potter, where she's very book smart and she often has to help the guys out with some of the research and stuff because they're too dense to understand. So she really reminded me of Hermione Granger. Not a bad thing necessarily, definitely might be playing on a stereotype a little bit, but I would have loved to see more female representation here. What's crazy to me is that I did rate this 5 stars, but I almost did not read it because this is categorized as a sci-fi. And my stance is, sci-fi is not my genre. But my stance is also to keep an open mind, and this is exactly why. And sometimes I feel really bad. If I know I don't like sci-fi, and I read it, and I don't enjoy it, you're gonna ask me like, Jack, why did you read that? Like, that you're not the audience for that. It wasn't meant for you. You know you don't like sci-fi. But here, I really, really liked it. And it worked for me. And even the elements of sci-fi that I say I don't like, there can be some situations where I do. So typically what I don't like is I don't like portals to other places or worlds, like an alternate dimension type thing. I feel like it's the author getting backed into a corner with writer's block and they don't know how to get a character out of a situation, so they just pop them through a portal. I don't like technology in books. I think even like weapons. Like, I don't like guns necessarily because that could be like another easy out. I like the more strategy type things. I don't like robots. I don't like space settings. And I'm not saying this book has all those things. This is not set in space. At least so far. It's only book 1 in a trilogy. So not all those things take place in this book. I'm just giving an example. This definitely has a sci-fi feel. There's some stuff that you could argue is like more fantasy. Like there's different colored fighting rings that have different influences on the fighters, like encouraging them to take action, maybe impulsively, rather than like stepping back and really examining the situation. So they can have different influences like that, which I could see as being fantasy, but there are some definite sci-fi elements that feel like more technology based. And it's so weird because I said that's an element of sci-fi I don't like, but combat codes just really worked for me and I was totally in it and I didn't feel like the sci-fi was being used as an escape to writer's block. I felt like it really made sense and I'm so intrigued, and it ended on a cliffhanger. And now my biggest problem is, do I pick up book 2 because I'm dying to know what happens next and my head is in this world, or do I wait because book 3 is being released in December? I think these were written like a couple years ago, but they're being re-released. And so I can't get book 3 on Amazon if I want to buy it, or on Libby if I want to check it out for my library. Book 3 is just not available to me right now. So do I read book 2 or do I wait? Because if that one ends on a cliffhanger, I really can't get book 3. So I'm conflicted. So those are the 4 books that I tried, but the 3 books that I completed for this back to school reading vlog, I really enjoyed the books that I picked for this. It definitely had like a lot of different tones and very distinct books. Very distinct for this back to school setting. Thank you so much for hanging out with me in this reading vlog, and I look forward to doing another themed reading vlog for you in the future. Thanks so much. I'll see you in the next video.